Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and today is Wednesday, January the 16th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And we had another nice channel today, fairly easy to distinguish and find. And again, not a whole lot of entry setups, but the ones that were there were pretty good entries. And so we'll talk about each one. And again, it'll probably be a pretty quick lesson tonight. They're just the price action's just been really kind of slow and methodical, but at least we're getting some movement. We had a nice trend channel today. We had a nice one yesterday. The one yesterday was probably even a little better. And so at least we're getting some movement, and the entries we are getting are relatively easy to see if you follow the rules. And there's really some shorts off of especially these two here, but I didn't mark them. They're more advanced trades, and when you're counter trend trading, that's when you get in trouble. So you're better off not to counter trend trade, but I will preface that because more than likely somebody will send me an email and say, hey, what about shorts off the highs? And really you need to wait till you get a trend line break and then a move to a new high, and then you can consider counter trend trades. But prior to that, you're better off just to leave these trades alone because you'll get fooled a lot, and that's where most people lose money. So hopefully that makes sense. And you'll just, the best trades are always these pullbacks to the EMA and the trend line, and you see they're very good entries. Every one of them made money, and so I just want you to be aware of that. But let's talk about the trade. Your first trade, the open came during this move up through here. And really, you could have considered shorting this, and if you did, that was okay, because at this point it was more of a trading range, and this is a break above there. You see it went one tick higher, and this is a fairly bearish bar. I didn't like it because of all the overlap. By the time it triggered, you had 1, 2, 3, 4 overlapping bars. At least one of them's a doji, and it did go for 1, 2, 3, 4. It went for 5 ticks, so if you dropped your limit order in and were able to get in up here, it was a pretty good trade. It would have worked either way, but I didn't like it because of all the overlap, so I didn't mark it. But it was a failed break higher, and it did have a nice kind of bearish bar. It just didn't trigger really quickly. And because we're coming off a double bottom and then a higher low, and now a higher high, that made it a little bit suspect too. So that's a reversal type pattern, and you got to be careful with those. So anyway, that's the reason I didn't mark that one. But your first real setup was right here. You had this little double bottom, and what I did was I drew this line right off of these lines right there, those first two lines, and that's where that turned. It looked pretty good. Actually, it's probably off that one right there, and I just drug that down to here and dropped it in down on this area. So I was looking for the turn somewhere. It didn't matter really where you dropped it in here as long as you got it somewhere close, and then you kind of adjust it later as the day goes on. But you should have been expecting a reversal right in here. So when we made this double bottom and then ticked lower and turned up, that was the place to go long, right above this bar right here. It's a second entry long. It's a failed second entry short. It's at the place where you're looking for a reversal. There's a double bottom with a trap. It's just a good place to go long. And it took it a few minutes to go, and hopefully you didn't get shaken out. If you did, you could have re-entered later. But it is a nice place to enter right there on that trap, that failed break lower. And you might have even considered entering on a limit order. That's what I did. I dropped a limit order right here, and it ticked one tick lower. So I got in at the very bottom there. And if you did that, then it was easy to get a runner. If you didn't, let me just see if you didn't enter that way, if your runner was any good. Your entry would have been 63 1/4. Nope. Looks like you probably didn't get a runner on that one if you didn't enter into this bar or enter with a limit order. But either way, once it ticked higher, I don't know if it came back enough to get you in on the inside of that bar. I can't remember. Yeah, it actually looks like it did. You could have at least gotten another tick there. So I bet you did get a chance to get in I should have paid more attention to that, but I was thinking about my trade as the first trade of the day and so forth, and I entered on that limit order there, and that allowed me to ride this up until we touched the trend channel line on the other side, and it went right to where I'd drawn it off those first couple of swings there, and it was a perfect move. I got out one tick in front, so I got out right there, ticked up, touched the line, I exited, came down, and then of course bounced right off that line again. And even if you'd drawn it like that, yeah, really you want to pull it up through there where you get the most touches. I drew mine off that first one right there, and because that's where it seemed to have closed to, so that kind of gave me, and then it bounced right off of it there. So nice long right there. Um, it's a two-legged pullback to the trend line. Perfect. That's our textbook setup. That particular pattern, a two-legged pattern. You see one leg down, a pullback, and then a second leg down. And that pattern back to a trend line or an EMA makes us more money than any pattern out there. It's simple, it's easy. It's so simple people overlook it. I often get questions about why I like that, but I'm telling you that particular setup will make you rich. If you learn to spot it and learn to trade it, it will make you a living. It'll make you wealthy, in fact. So don't discount the credit of it or the value of that simple pattern, which is just a two-legged move back to a trend line or the EMA, and when it hits them both like it does here or really right in here, that's a great place to enter. So nice setup. And again, runners would have been easily safe on this one, and you exit right up here. I exited right here, right before the touch. It actually went one tick further, but you can't get greedy, and so I was out right here, and we went into this right here. This really was tempting to go short, but we hadn't had a trend line break yet, and it's obvious this is a channel, so I don't recommend that short. And you see what would have happened? You would have got hung up in this stuff, and it would have worked, but it wasn't worth the risk. And this the prices actually came and went through the trend. This was a very bearish bar right here, and you really had no attempt to go higher except for this bar right here. But by the time it's set up, we'd already gone through this line or through the trend line a little bit with that very bearish bar, and then this one, even though it's really bullish, it's kind of overlapping, and you got these bars. But I could see where you could easily get trapped on this bar right here. It just didn't feel right to me. It didn't look good, and I didn't take it. So luckily, I did not get trapped here. But if you went long, and it was probably really tempting above that bar, when it turned down right there, you know, if you had your stop just below this bar, you were in trouble. If you didn't have a 2-point stop, let me see if even a 2-point stop would have worked, which is generally our maximum. If you entered at 66.75, that means you would have had 64. Yeah, you would have survived a 2-point stop by one tick. And but I wouldn't, you know, since the trend is up, I might have given it a 2-point stop, and you might have considered giving it a 2-point stop. But it was just better to wait and see if you couldn't get a second entry, especially after this reversal pattern and all that overlap down through there. You've got overlap here too, but notice that we don't have a reversal pattern up here first. And that's what really kind of, I think, alerted me to be careful there. And you may not have noticed that, so I can see how it'd be real easy to get, because most of the time I'd want to take that trade, and I was really tempted to take it today. But it just, if you got trapped there, you just exit right here and you lose a tick or two. But really the best way to enter a trade like this, when you got that overlap, notice that there's no overlap here. There is a little bit of overlap here, but you had the trap, and you don't have that yet here. It just comes down to the line and kind of overlaps. And so those are some things to look for and to be a little bit concerned about. And so if you did go long there, smart idea when that ended as a doji to exit. And you could have got out of that with only a tick or two loss. And and look to re-enter here when you got this trap. And you don't want to be going short yet because, you know, this is the first real attempt of a break at the trend line. And that's what you had to think was going on maybe when this turned down. And we did. We broke the trend line. No real good setup here for a long until you got the trap. And now you got a second entry long right there. Kind of similar to it breaking lower here and then turning up. And so great place to go long was right there. One tick above when it went lower first and then turned back up. And again, it took it a few minutes to work out, but it'll do that a lot of times. It takes a minute for the momentum to build, especially after the trend line break, because you got a lot of people fooled thinking short that don't understand price action. And so it took a few minutes, but it worked on out. We made it. We had the break of the trend line. We had a new high. We made one attempt to go higher and failed, and notice that double top. I wouldn't be shorting that one yet. I'd wait on a second entry off of any new high after a trend line break, because you might get another leg like this leg right here, and that so that could have gone, if you measure that right there, I think that puts it up here around 70 or so. And I had that conversation with another trader today that asked me about you know, what my target was. And so you could have maybe seen that target of around 70 if you measure that leg and look for this leg. Let me just show you that, because some of you hadn't been following us may not get that. But there's leg one, then there's your correction, and then there's leg two. So that puts it up there right around 71. So that could have been a possibility there. So you don't want to be shorting without a reversal pattern. And then notice what happens. You get that double top. It breaks one tick higher, turns down, and then tries to go up and turns down again. There's your second entry right there. There's a lot of overlap, but to me, this one was worth taking. And what you'd want to do is, like I talked about down here, drop your limit order back up in here and let it break lower and then pull back and then turn back down, because that's what will generally happen. And you know, easy scalp, and if, you know, you may not have got a runner off this one, but if you know, depending on how you manage your trade, your runner could have gone all the way down into the close. But once this started, if I had a runner going, once this started doing this, I would exit. It's not worth hanging on because you don't know that you're going to get anything later, especially that late in the day. So, but that was it for today, and there just really wasn't any more, and it was really fairly simple, fairly straightforward, except for maybe right here. And that's the way all trends do. Eventually, they are going to break the trend line and probably get a retest and then a reversal. And that's what happened right here. But this was the only one that was a little bit questionable. And a lot of times what I'll tell you to do is, you know, draw your trend lines. And that'll give you more clues. You notice that we don't really have a break outside that trend line. You draw that trend line, you got a break and then a retest. You kind of draw that trend line, you got a little bit of a break and then a retest. But notice here, you don't have that till right here, and then a little bit of an attempt to retest, and then it takes off. So that's one way that I like to do. And I don't talk about those shorter term trend lines, because they're not as you don't see them as often, but generally they're there. This one's a little more subtle, but it's there. If you drew it off those first couple, you know, then it kind of finally breaks it and turns down and tests. And then here you got some stems up there, but you never really got anything trading outside of that closes. And but notice we closed outside of it here, and then this traded way outside of it before it turned down. And same thing here, it closed outside of it here and then turned down a retest and then reverse. So draw those short-term trend lines, and you'll get better at it. They're if you haven't done it very much, you probably won't, you know, you may not know exactly how to draw them. Sometimes they will be right off the stems, but when a stem's sticking up there even, you're probably going to get it off the closes or something like that. But it's a good clue. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Weather's still a little bit, it's clearing a little bit. The skies are still cloudy, and there's a chance we may get some more of the sleet and rain tonight, but the roads are still clear, so not too bad around here, but just horrible, yucky weather, and school's still iffy. So hopefully tomorrow will be a good trading day, and Maybe we'll get some sunshine tomorrow. I don't know. I haven't seen the weather forecast for tomorrow yet. But anyway, this is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.